Welcome back to my channel. So today I'll be talking about a new Indian myth. But before I dive in, sorry if my setup is different. There's some work that's happening in what used to be my setup. So there's some work being done in our house, so I can't really use that area. So I'm just in my room for now. Um, but yeah, without further ado, let me dive into this next myth. So the next myth is called Dhruva, and it's named after the main character of the story. And it's mentioned in two ancient Indian texts, the Vishnu Purana and the Bhagavata Purana. So here's the story. So Dhruva, the main character, is still a little boy when this all happens, and he's a son of King Uttanapada and Queen Suniti. And another name that you can also I will also be referring to his father as is King Uttanpad. So Uttanpad, Uttanapada, either or. So King Uttanapada and Queen Suniti's son was Dhruva, and he also was married to another queen, Suruchi. So Suruchi was younger, and obviously he spent more time with her and he showered her with more affection because of her beauty. But Suruchi really hated Dhruv because she wanted her own biological son, named Uttam, to be the heir to the throne, which he wouldn't rightfully be because Dhruva was older. So Dhruva was the rightful heir to the throne. So she tried to distance Dhruva and his mother as much as she could from King Uttanapada, and it worked because King Uttanapada was so besought with Queen Suruchi's beauty that he kind of pretty much neglected his first wife and son. So one day, Dhruv wanted to sit on his father's lap and just spend time with him, like any son would want to. And Surichi forbade him from doing so and basically threw him out of his lap and said that Dhruva would only be rightfully able to spend time with his father and sit in his lap if he had been born from her womb. And so, of course, Dhruva was like, well, that's not possible. I want to sit on my father's lap. What should I do? And then Surichi said, well, if you want to be born from my womb, then pray to the Lord Vishnu, and you probably might get to sit on your father's lap. So Dhruva was pondering this for a long time, and he was, of course, upset. He's a little 5 or 6 year old boy. And he goes to his mother, and he tells her everything. And his mother says that, yes, Lord Vishnu can solve all of our problems. And she explains more about who Lord Vishnu is. And basically, Lord Vishnu is known as the protector of the universe. There's three main gods in Indian mythology, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. So Lord Brahma is known as the creator of the universe, Lord Vishnu is known as the protector of the universe, and Lord Shiva is known as the destroyer of the universe, but not like destroying the universe like just for bad reasons, but like the destroyer of evil that is in the universe. So basically, his mother tells him, yes, you know what, pray to Lord Vishnu that everything is okay again and that, we are one happy family again. So Dhruva basically decides that he has to go on a mission to find Lord Vishnu, and if he doesn't, he's never coming back home. So he leaves the palace and he goes off to find Lord Vishnu. So he goes off to the forest and he's on this journey. And while this is all happening, obviously King Uttanapada and Queen Suruchi are very or not Queen Suruchi, Queen Suniti, who is Dhruva's mother, are very they're like, where's my son? What happened? They're very upset. And of course, Suniti blames it on Uttanapada because she's like, if you had just, kind of stood up to your wife, then none of this would have happened. And then Uttanapada's father, King Manu, he's even ashamed of his own son. He says that after he finds out that Dhruva is missing, he's like, wow, you've been so caught up in your other wife's beauty that you've neglected your duties as a husband, your duties as a father. Basically, you're just a terrible, you're not even worth being called a rightful king anymore. And so basically, King Uttanapata is blamed for everything, which he rightfully should be blamed for mostly what happened. And basically, the thing that King Manu tells his son is that mistakes aren't erased just by asking for forgiveness, but you have to take accountability and rectify them. And he also says that what king can keep his subjects happy when there's unrest and uncertainty in his own family unit? And so basically, he just says, like, yeah, you're pretty much whipped by Queen Suruchi, and you need to get your priorities straight. So while this is all happening, Dhruv is wandering in the forest, and the divine sage, Narada, appears, and he's basically like kind of a messenger of all three worlds. Like he sends messages everywhere. And what happens is he sees this little boy wandering in the forest, and he says, "What are you doing? Why are you in the forest? Go back to your, home." And Dhruv says that, "No, I won't go back home until I find Lord Vishnu." And Narada is basically very impressed, and he says, "Wow, like you're taking this seriously. Okay." So he tells Dhruv to meditate upon the mantra called Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And basically it translates to Om, I bow to Lord Vasudevaya or Lord Krishna. And those are two other names for Lord Vishnu. So Dhruv meditates very intensely for 6 months, and his meditation and his like penance gets progressively more severe. So first he just lives off of like the fruits and berries and water in the forest. Then he only lives on grass and water, then just grass, then just water, then just air, and finally to a point where he's not even breathing anymore. He's just chanting this mantra and focusing on it so much, he's not even breathing. And his penance is so intense that all the gods and goddesses in the heavens can't breathe either. And they're just like, okay, Lord Vishnu, you have to go see this boy. Otherwise, even though we are immortal and we won't die, we can't live in this kind of pain forever. So Lord Vishnu goes and sees the boy, and Dhruva finally opens his eyes, and he's just like awestruck. He sees this magnificent figure of Lord Vishnu, and he's just like, wow, like my whole life is complete. I don't even remember what I was gonna ask for in the first place. And of course, Dhruva was asking for approval from his family, and approval from his stepmother. But he's like, you know what? Now that I've seen you, Lord Vishnu, like I don't need anything else. And Lord Vishnu is like so impressed by Dhruva's devotion, and he was expecting Dhruva to ask for materialistic things and something of that nature. But seeing that he's a little boy and he's so just entranced by seeing the Lord and entranced in the devotion of the Lord, he blesses him and he says, "Go home and everything will be okay." During this time, even Queen Suruchi, she feels terrible, and she's like, even though I'm his stepmom, I still have a duty to be loving to him, and I've always shown him like hatred and disgust and all these terrible emotions. And so both the queens and the king are very like just struck with worry. And finally, Dhruva appears, and everyone accepts him, and he becomes crowned as the king at the age of 6, which is very impressive. And actually, he gets assigned, like when he passes away, he becomes a celestial body, so he becomes the pole star. And so, yeah, and the myth ends happily, and everyone lives happily ever after. So, going on to the analysis of the characters, so Suruchi is a prime example in the beginning of the lesson that all that glitters is not gold. So even though she's a stunning beauty, her heart is very cold. And she's even referred to sometimes as the epitome of greed in the beginning, because she just wants the kingdom for her son. She wants the position as the main wife. And she gets all of that, but through manipulation. And ultimately, Dhruva even sees her rudeness as a blessing because he gets to meet Lord Vishnu in the process of it. And I'll touch on that later when we get to Dhruva's character analysis. But yeah. So King Uttanpad, his problem is that he's so blinded by, of course, Queen Suruchi's beauty, he neglects his own duties as a father, as a good husband, and as even a king. And he is basically the sole one responsible for Dhruva's plight. And as his own father, Manu, tells him, that if you can't have harmony in your home, you're not going to be able to have harmony in your kingdom. And Dhruva, he's basically an example of the lesson of one has to believe in their true potential regardless of what people say about their abilities. And many people, I don't think they were exactly trying to discourage him, but like Sage Narada was like, you're just a boy, like, go home, this is too hard of a journey even for adults. But Dhruva was very persistent, and he believed that, he had the right intentions in his heart to go see Lord Vishnu. He didn't want material things from him. He just wanted love from his family. And eventually he even forgot about that and was like, wow, I see you, Lord Vishnu. Like, I feel all the love that I'll ever need. So basically, I think that's one lesson that he's an example of. And also, he shows that you can make the best of every situation and you can see failure and rejection as a stepping stone to progress. So even though Queen Suruchi was rude to him, Dhruva could have just cried at his plight and just been like, well, I guess this is my life. But instead of seeing it as an obstacle, like I said earlier, he saw Queen Suruchi's rudeness to him as a blessing because it motivated him to take those steps to go forward and seek out Lord Vishnu and ultimately bring love and happiness back into his life. So I think the main lessons that we learn here are no matter what people say about our abilities, we need to be, I guess, our best support system, and we need to believe in our abilities and not, listen to naysayers and just trust our intuition. And if we have the right intentions in our heart to do something, we'll be able to do it. I think another way that this relates to a lot of us today is that I think a lot of people have this problem of procrastination or, being scared to start something because of the fear of failure. And so a lot of the times we are our own worst enemies because we let our thoughts prevent us from doing what we could probably do. And I think with the whole example of Dhruv only being 6 and people saying that, oh, you shouldn't do this, or you're only 6 years old, like with Sage Narada saying that. And I don't think Sage Narada meant that as in a sense as like, you can't do it, but, oh, you should go home, you're only a boy. Um, but despite all of that, that determination, that fire that he had within him really drove him, and he finally got to the result that he wanted to get to. And I think that the fear of failure is something that does paralyze a lot of us in society, and I think it always has, not just today, but always. And I think the realization is that, of course, life isn't always going to be smooth sailing, but it is those times when we don't get exactly what we want or things don't work out exactly as we planned. Those times really test us as to whether or not we decide to continue or we decide to give up. And I personally believe that failure isn't not getting what you want, but deciding that I don't want this anymore because it didn't work out the way I wanted to, so I'm going to give up. But yeah, I really like this myth because it's a very like empowering and uplifting myth. And if I think if you're having issues with yourself in terms of, okay, can I do this? You're not having confidence. I think reading this myth always kind of just, brings that spring back in my step at least. And I'm just like, well, if a 6-year-old boy can do it, so can I. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and I'll be thinking about new myths to do. And if there's any suggestions that you guys have for any myths I should do an analysis on, it doesn't have to be Indian myths. It could be any myth from any land and any culture. I'd love to know, and please leave your suggestions in the comments below. Take care, everyone. Bye.